Welcome to week 1 of my 6-week painting challenge to improve watercolor landscapes. As you can see, I've been busy this week, trying out multiple techniques, using different brushes, painting with a variety of colors, and so on. Today, I'm going to be working on what I consider the 3 main categories of mountains, at least when it comes to painting. I'll go over each of them as we dive into watercolors, and we'll talk about when we might use each of these types of mountains. I'll be referring to these categories as rolling hills, mountain peaks, and rock formations. First up, rolling hills. I like to paint between 1 to 3 layers, with the lightest in the back. I start out by just barely dampening my watercolor paper with my brush. The more water you put on your paper, the more the paint will bleed and expand. While this provides a nice blurry effect for those faraway planes, I want to keep my shapes fairly intact, so I'm really limiting the amount of water I lay down beforehand. Now I'm using a clean wet brush to fade out the bottom portion, followed by a piece of paper towel to dab away some of the paint. My paper is now nearly dry, as I didn't want as much bleeding and blurring for the second layer. Since this layer is closer, the mountains will be more crisp and darker in value than the previous layer. We can also expect to see a bit more detail as we move forward, closer to the viewer. These rolling hills are often smooth and rounded. They're generally lower and have little to no sharp edges. These are the types of mountains that pair well with a barn and a row of crops, or a field with a small pond. I tend to use greens and yellows, maybe a hint of blue, for fields of grass, hay, and wheat, although colorful plains are beautiful as well. I'm adding in more detail by dropping in paint in select areas where I might see shadows. I'm also pulling my land out in a few places here, because I think this painting would look great with a large, still lake in front of these mountains. When I think of rolling hills, I think of the farmland I've seen in Kansas and Iowa. With a pencil sketch first, but for this mountain range, I'm just making an outline with the paint, going for basically the lightest value for this step. I'm painting wet on dry for now, so my peaks will look sharp against the background. I might consider wetting my paper slightly first if I wanted the viewer's eyes to fall on something in the foreground, while these mountains fade into the background. But because these are front and center, I'll keep them in focus. Time for the third category, cliffs and rock formations. Once again, I'm starting out with nearly dry paper. I only want the smallest amount of feathering just to show distance. Not just for the layers, but also for shadows and the cracks between the rocks that don't see much sunlight. Now we'll share some finished landscapes. Notice the 3 categories of mountains and their surroundings. I'd love to hear in the comments, do you find yourself painting any mountains that fall outside of these 3 categories? Maybe there's a 4th category that I can include in a future video. If you haven't watched the first video of this series yet, when I go into more detail about this challenge, I'll have it linked in the description below. Thanks for watching!